In the middle of the Portland storm, a single dad pulled over. Not knowing the soaked nurse, he offered a ride had just lost her entire world. If you believe in second chances and the power of kindness, hit that like button and subscribe for more touching stories like this. The wipers struggled against the downpour, slapping back and forth as sheets of rain hammered the windshield. Headlights reflected off puddles that coated the cracked Portland streets, turning the city into a maze of glistening mirrors. Michael Hayes gripped the steering wheel tighter, leaning forward to peer through the blur. His old pickup truck rumbled steadily through the storm as he navigated a familiar route. He glanced at the clock. 5:42 p.m. Come on, he muttered to himself. He was already cutting it close. Lily's piano lesson ended at 6, and he promised he'd be there on time today. She hated waiting in the lobby alone, and Michael hated letting her down, especially after everything they'd been through. The intersection light turned red, forcing him to a stop. Rain pounded on the roof like angry fists, drumming out every other sound. As he waited, his gaze drifted to the sidewalk ahead. That's when he saw her. A woman sat huddled under the narrow shelter of a bus stop, though the overhang did little to keep her dry. She wore pale blue hospital scrubs, now soaked through, clinging to her frame. Her shoulders trembled, not from the cold, but from something else. Her head hung low, long dark hair plastered to her face. Even from this distance, Michael could see her hands gripping the edge of the bench, as if holding herself together. The light turned green, but Michael's foot hesitated on the gas. He could drive on. He should drive on. Lily was waiting. But something about the woman's posture, defeated yet oddly dignified, gripped at him. It wasn't the way most people sat in the rain, impatient and annoyed. This was different. She looked lost. With a sigh, Michael guided the truck toward the curb, tires slicing to the growing river along the gutter. He rolled the window down halfway, rain misting into the cabin. "Hey!" he called out gently, trying not to startle her. "Do you need a ride?" The woman jerked her head up. For a brief moment, their eyes met, even through the rain-streaked window. He could see the exhaustion etched in her face. Dark circles framed her brown eyes, and her lips trembled slightly as if searching for words. She blinked, surprised, wary. She started, her voice hoarse. "I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," Michael said, his voice calm and steady. "You shouldn't be out here like this. Come on, let me give you a lift." She looked down the street. No buses in sight. No taxis. No one else. After a brief hesitation, she nodded slowly. "Okay, thank you." Michael unlocked the door, and she hurried to the passenger side, pulling it open with shaky hands. She climbed in, quickly shutting the door against the rain, her soaked scrubs dripping onto the floor mat. "Thank you," she whispered again, voice barely audible. "No problem," Michael replied, starting the truck back on its way. "Where to?" The woman hesitated, looking down at her lap. Downtown, if that's okay." "Downtown it is," Michael said, glancing over off her small reassuring smile. She kept her eyes forward, hugging herself for warmth. The cab was filled with the scent of rain and faint hospital antiseptic. Neither spoke for several moments, the only sound hum of the engine and the rhythmic beat of rain against metal. Michael stole another glance at her. Up close, she looked even more worn than he'd first noticed. The soaked scrubs clung to her thin frame. Her knuckles were white from gripping her arms so tightly. "Rough day?" he asked gently. A humorless laugh escaped her lips, barely more than a breath. "Something like that." Michael respected the wall she was keeping up. He knew that wall all too well. Still, he felt the need to offer something, anything, to break the heaviness inside the cab. "I'm Michael," he said. "Rachel," she replied softly, finally looking at him. Her voice cracked as she spoke, but she tried to steady it. "Rachel Morgan." "Nice to meet you, Rachel," Michael said kindly. "I'd offer you a towel if I had one." A small smile flickered across her lips, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "It's okay. The rain actually feels honest." Michael didn't respond immediately, but her words sat with him. Honest. That was a strange way to describe rain, but he understood. Sometimes life storms mirrored what was happening inside. As they approached another red light, Michael noticed her hospital ID badge clipped to her soaked scrub top. The name Rachel Morgan, RN, was printed beneath the hospital's logo. For a brief second, a faint recognition stirred somewhere in his mind, but he couldn't place it. Maybe just familiarity with the hospital itself. It was one of the larger ones in the area. "Are you heading home from shift?" he asked, trying again to offer conversation that wasn't intrusive. Rachel paused, then shook her head slightly. "No, not exactly." Her voice caught on the words, and she swallowed hard. Michael sensed the weight behind her answer, but chose not to press. They returned to silence as he guided the truck through the flooded streets. After a few more turns, the tall gray buildings of downtown Portland came into view through the rain-streaked glass. Rachel shifted in her seat, her hands unclenching slightly. "Anywhere particular?" Michael asked. "Just here's fine," she said quickly, pointing to a corner near a closed coffee shop. Michael pulled over, slowing to a gentle stop. The rain showed no signs of letting up. Rachel reached for the door handle, but paused. She turned to him, her eyes glistening, not just from the rain, but from something deeper. "Thank you, Michael," she said earnestly. "Really, you didn't have to stop." "Sometimes it's good to stop," he replied softly. She opened the door, stepping back out into the downpour, her thin figure quickly swallowed by the rain. Michael sat there for a moment, watching her walk away under the weight of the storm. The image of her hunched frame burned itself into his mind. As he pulled back into traffic, his eyes briefly flicked once more to the empty passenger seat, where a faint imprint of her remained. The clock read 5:59 p.m. He pressed harder on the gas, hoping Lily wouldn't be too upset. The rain still hadn't let up as Michael steered the truck away from downtown, headlights slicing through sheets of water. The windshield wipers kept their steady rhythm, but inside the cab, silence pressed heavier than the storm outside. He glanced at the passenger seat. Rachel sat stiffly, her arms wrapped tightly around her midsection, as though trying to hold herself together. Her soaked scrubs clung uncomfortably to her skin. Wet strands of hair stuck to her face, but she made no effort to fix them. She simply stared ahead, lost somewhere far beyond the rain-slicked streets. Michael respected the silence, but it gnawed at him. He had picked her up out of instinct, compassion maybe, but now, sitting next to her, feeling the weight of her quiet, it was clear there was far more beneath the surface. Still, he knew better than to push. Sometimes silence was safer. Streetlights flickered past them, each brief flash casting pale reflections across her face. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her breathing shallow but steady. She hadn't touched the towel he had offered when she first got back into the truck. After several long minutes, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lost my apartment today." The words hovered in the air, heavy and fragile. She didn't look at him as she said it, her gaze fixed on the blurred world outside her window. Michael kept his eyes on the road. "I'm sorry to hear that." She let out a shaky breath, as though even acknowledging her situation threatened to unravel her further. "The landlord gave me until noon. I packed what I could into my car. Everything else gone." The sadness in her voice was profound, but it was the exhaustion that struck Michael the most. It wasn't the tiredness that came from lack of sleep. It was deeper, an emotional fatigue that weighed on her entire being. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" he asked, his tone careful. Rachel shook her head slightly. "No, my car broke down yesterday. That was my last option." Her voice wavered, and she quickly cleared her throat, as if trying to steady herself. "I was just hoping to figure something out before the rain started." Michael felt a knot tighten in his chest. The thought of her sitting at that bus stop, soaked and defeated, gnawed at him. He glanced at her again, taking in the subtle tremor of her fingers as they gripped her elbow. She was trying to stay composed, but the cracks were showing. "Do you have any family nearby?" he ventured. She shook her head once more firmly this time. "Not here. My parents, they passed a few years ago." Michael nodded softly, saying nothing. He recognized that particular brand of loneliness, the kind that settled in your bones when you realized there was no one left to call. The road opened up ahead, giving him a brief reprieve from navigating the narrow city streets. The rain continued its relentless assault, blurring the world into shades of gray. Rachel stared out the window, but Michael could see her lips trembling. She closed her eyes briefly, as if willing herself not to break. And yet, the weight of everything seemed to finally push through. "My fiancée died last year." The words escaped in a quiet, broken admission. Michael kept his hands firmly on the wheel, allowing her space. "I'm sorry." She swallowed hard, voice cracking again. "Car accident. He was hit by a drunk driver." Her hands clenched tighter around her arms. "We were supposed to get married in the fall." The pain laced through every word, raw and unfiltered. Michael's chest ached for her, even though they were strangers. He knew grief when he saw it. Hers was still fresh, still sharp. Rachel continued, her voice distant now, as though speaking to herself. "After he died, everything just fell apart. I tried to keep working. I needed to stay busy. But then the hospital started cutting shifts. And then the bills piled up. My savings ran out faster than I thought." Michael listened, his heart heavy. He imagined her struggling to juggle grief and survival, each burden feeding the other, leaving little room for healing. Rachel gave a bitter little laugh, one devoid of any humor. "I always thought if I just worked hard enough, kept my head down, I could pull through. But life doesn't always work that way." Michael nodded slowly. "No, it doesn't." The cab fell into silence again, but this time it felt different, heavier, but more honest. The rain provided a steady background, like nature's quiet acknowledgement of everything unsaid between them. A few more blocks passed before Michael cleared his throat softly. "Look, I know this probably sounds crazy, but I live nearby. It's not much, but there's a guest room. You're welcome to stay there tonight, just until you figure things out." Rachel's head snapped toward him, eyes wide with surprise. I don't even know you." "I understand," Michael said gently. "And I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. But it's cold, it's pouring, and you've had a rough enough day. My daughter's home. It's a safe place. Just for tonight." Rachel hesitated, torn between pride and desperation. Her lips quivered slightly as she searched for words. I don't want to impose." "You wouldn't be," Michael assured her. "It's really no trouble." The cab filled with another long pause. Finally, she exhaled, her breath shaky. "Okay," she whispered. "Just for tonight." Michael offered a soft, reassuring nod as he turned down the familiar road leading home. The small gesture of trust between two strangers filled the space between them as the rain continued its steady rhythm on the roof. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle by the time Michael's pickup rolled into the gravel driveway. The small single-story house stood quietly beneath the gray sky, its porch light casting a warm, inviting glow that cut through the mist. Rachel sat quietly in the passenger seat, her fingers nervously twisting the damp fabric of her scrubs. As Michael put the truck in park, she offered a weak smile, though the exhaustion behind her eyes remained. "It's not much," Michael said, glancing at her with a humble shrug. "But it's home." "It's lovely," Rachel whispered, her voice thin but sincere. He stepped out first, hurrying around the passenger's side to open her door before she could protest. She stepped down carefully, her legs stiff from the tense ride. The moment her feet touched the gravel, a cool breeze stirred her damp hair, sending a shiver through her. "Let's get you inside," Michael said kindly. He led her up the short wooden steps and unlocked the front door. The faint scent of pine and something sweet, perhaps vanilla, greeted them as they entered. The house was small, but warm, lived in. A few framed photos lined the entryway table. A smiling little girl, a younger Michael, and a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Daddy," a small voice called from deeper inside. Rachel's posture stiffened slightly. "In the kitchen, sweetheart," Michael called back. A moment later, a young girl with light brown hair and curious blue eyes peeked around the corner. She looked about 9 years old, wearing polka dot pajamas and clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "This is my daughter, Lily," Michael said, his voice softening. Lily's eyes shifted curiously to Rachel, taking in the stranger standing beside her father. "Hi!" Rachel offered gently, smiling through her nerves. I'm Rachel. Lily tilted her head, her voice quiet but polite. Hi. Michael placed a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder. Rachel's going to stay with us tonight. She's had a rough day. Lily nodded, processing the information. After a small pause, she added, You look cold. Rachel's smile wavered but deepened. A little, yeah. Without hesitation, Lily darted off and returned moments later holding out a folded blanket. This helps me when I feel cold, she said shyly. Rachel accepted it with both hands, her throat tightening. Thank you, Lily. That's very kind of you. Michael's heart swelled with quiet pride. All right, kiddo, why don't you go finish your book? I'll make us some dinner. Lily smiled once more at Rachel before skipping back toward her room. The soft patter of her footsteps faded down the hallway. Michael turned back toward Rachel. Guest room's just down here. I'll show you. She followed him to a small, cozy bedroom at the end of the hallway. The bed was neatly made, a soft quilt tucked carefully over simple white sheets. A small dresser sat in the corner beside a modest window. It's not the Ritz, he joked lightly, but at least it's dry. Rachel managed a quiet chuckle, her shoulders loosening slightly. It's perfect. Thank you. He gestured toward the dresser. There should be some old sweatshirts in there, if you want something dry to wear. Thank you, Michael. Really, she repeated. Her voice weighted with sincerity. I'll let you get settled. Dinner'll be ready in about 20 minutes. As he closed the door gently behind him, Rachel stood in the middle of the small room, her breath hitching. She placed a blanket Lily had given her onto the bed and walked slowly to the dresser, pulling out one of the oversized sweatshirts. It smelled faintly of laundry detergent and cedarwood. Changing into the dry clothes, she allowed herself a small moment of comfort. The warmth of the fabric felt like the first good thing that had touched her skin in days. Dinner was simple, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, but it was more than Rachel had eaten all day. She sat at the small wooden kitchen table across from Michael, with Lily settled between them, happily dipping her sandwich into her soup. Conversation was light but kind, filled with careful pauses, as they navigated the awkwardness of strangers sharing a meal. So you're a nurse? Michael asked gently. Rachel nodded, taking a small sip from her spoon. Yes, for a few years now. Pediatrics, he ventured. Mostly, yes, but I've worked in a few departments when they needed coverage. Her voice softened. I've always loved working with kids. Lily beamed. I don't like shots. Rachel smiled at her gently. Most kids don't, but I promise, I try to make them as quick as possible. Michael chuckled, his eyes briefly meeting Rachel's. There was a softness in his gaze that she hadn't noticed before, a quiet strength built on years of patience and hardship. Rachel glanced at a photograph on the wall behind him, a family portrait with Michael, Lily, and the same smiling woman she saw earlier. Michael caught her glance, and for a brief moment, the warmth of his face was replaced by something more somber. He cleared his throat softly. My wife passed away about 3 years ago, he said, voice even but low. Cancer. Rachel's heart clenched. I'm so sorry. He offered a faint nod. Thank you. The room grew quiet again, the weight of shared loss settling between them like an unspoken understanding. For the first time that evening, Rachel felt something unexpected. A strange sense of safety, of not being entirely alone. After dinner, Michael insisted on cleaning up while Rachel followed Lily into the living room, where they spent a few minutes reading one of Lily's storybooks. Rachel's heart softened at the girl's innocence and resilience. Eventually, Michael guided Lily to bed, and Rachel retreated to the guest room. Alone once again, the fragile composure she clung to all evening began to crack. She sat on the edge of the bed, pulling open a small pouch she carried in her bag. From it, she retrieved a simple silver necklace, her mother's. The tiny locket at its center glinted under the dim bedside lamp. Clutching it tightly, she closed her eyes, breathing deeply as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. The house was quiet now, save for the occasional creak of old wood settling against the night. Rachel didn't fight the tears. She let them fall freely, letting the day's weight roll off her shoulders bit by bit. In this quiet room in a stranger's home, she allowed herself to break, if only for a moment. Her phone buzzed softly beside her. She wiped her face and picked it up. One new message flashed across the screen. Final notice. Eviction confirmed. The tears that had momentarily slowed returned, sharp and overwhelming. She set the phone down and curled beneath the blanket Lily had given her, the necklace still clutched in her hand. Outside, the rain began to fall once more. The soft scent of brewing coffee wafted through the house as morning light spilled through the kitchen window. Rachel stood at the counter, carefully pouring pancake batter into a sizzling pan. She wore one of Michael's oversized flannel shirts over her borrowed sweatpants, the fabric warm against her skin. Behind her, the low hum of morning chaos filled the air. Lily's backpack half open on the dining table, school papers scattered, and mismatched socks peeking out beneath her uniform pants. "Do I need my lunchbox today?" Lily called out, rubbing her still sleepy eyes. Rachel smiled softly. "Of course. It's already packed and in the fridge." Lily's eyes lit up. "You packed it? What's in it?" Rachel turned from the stove, a playful twinkle in her eye. "Well, I may have slipped in an extra cookie, but only one. Don't tell your dad." Lily giggled, her face brightening as she zipped her backpack. The sound of her laughter filled the kitchen like sunshine, warming Rachel in ways she hadn't expected. Michael entered from the hallway, buttoning his shirt as he took in the scene. For a moment he paused, surprised by how naturally Rachel fit into the rhythm of the house. "Good morning," he said, his voice light with genuine warmth. "Morning," Rachel replied, flipping the pancakes with practiced ease. Michael glanced around, taking the sight of the neatly prepared breakfast plates, the packed lunchbox, and Lily fully dressed and ready ahead of schedule, a rare sight on most mornings. "You've worked miracles in here," he said, half teasing. "I usually can't get her out the door without a full negotiation." Rachel chuckled. Nurses are used to morning chaos. Kids aren't that different from patients sometimes. Michael laughed, setting his coffee mug down. True enough. As they sat down together, Lily chatted about her upcoming spelling test, while Rachel listened intently, offering encouragement and a few playful hints on tricky words. Michael watched the exchange quietly, the easy bond forming between his daughter and this woman who, just yesterday, had been a stranger. There was something comforting in the way Rachel listened, with genuine interest, not just polite nods. It was a rare tenderness. Once breakfast wrapped up, Michael grabbed his keys while Rachel helped Lily slip on her raincoat. "I'll drive her to school," he offered. "You've already done enough this morning." Rachel nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "Good luck on your test." "Thanks." Lily beamed before following her dad out the door. Rachel stood by the window for a moment, watching them pull out of the driveway, the drizzle starting up again under the gray sky. The house felt quieter now, but not in the hollow way she'd grown used to. It was peaceful. Her phone buzzed on the countertop, breaking the moment. She glanced down to call her ID, St. Mary's Hospital. Swallowing her nerves, she answered, "Rachel Morgan." "Miss Morgan, this is Diane from the Licensing Board office. We've reviewed your case documentation. Your hearing has been fast-tracked to next Tuesday at 10 a.m. The words hit like a jolt of electricity. "Next Tuesday?" Rachel echoed, her voice tight. "Yes, ma'am. Please make sure to bring all supporting documents." "Understood. Thank you." She hung up, her hands trembling slightly as she set the phone back down. Her mind swirled with anxiety. The hearing. So soon. She hadn't expected it to come this fast. The incident from 3 months ago still haunted her. The difficult patient, the accusation, the investigation. The weight of it pressed on her chest like a stone. She shook herself free of the spiral, knowing panic wouldn't help. Taking a deep breath, she glanced at the clock and decided fresh air might clear her head. Stepping outside, she found Michael in the small detached workshop behind the house. The scent of sawdust and fresh cut would fill the cool air as he ran a plane across a piece of oak, smoothing its surface with steady hands. The rhythmic scrape of the tool was oddly soothing. Rachel hesitated at the doorway. "Am I interrupting?" Michael looked up with a smile. Not at all. Come on in. She stepped into the workshop, eyeing a half-finished project on the workbench. A wooden crib, its delicate spindles sanded smooth and ready for assembly. That's beautiful, she said softly, running her fingers along the polished frame. It's for my neighbor, Michael explained. Their first baby's due next month. I promised I'd build it. Rachel watched him work, the way his hands moved with quiet precision, shaping the raw wood into something lasting and gentle. There was something calming about it, almost therapeutic. You're really good at this. Michael shrugged modestly. I've been doing it most of my life. Started as a hobby, became a bit of a coping mechanism. To be honest. He paused, choosing his words carefully. After my wife passed, the house felt too quiet. Working with my hands helped, gave me something to focus on. Rachel nodded, understanding far more than words could express. I get that. Michael glanced at her, sensing the weight behind her simple reply. This used to be her favorite spot, he added softly. She loved watching me work out here. Sometimes she'd sit right there, reading while I built things. Rachel's throat tightened, but she managed a small, sad smile. She sounded like she was wonderful. She was, he said simply. The two stood in silence for a moment, the air thick with shared understanding. Two people carrying invisible wounds, each finding quiet ways to keep moving forward. Michael changed the subject gently. What about you? Nursing always a plan. Rachel let out a faint laugh. Not at first. My mom was a nurse. She used to bring me to volunteer at shelters when I was little. I guess it stuck. Michael smiled. Sounds like your mom raised you well. Rachel's expression softened. She did. She passed a few years before everything else. Her voice caught briefly, but she steadied herself. I guess I've just been trying to keep going, one shift at a time. Michael nodded in quiet agreement, sensing her need not to go deeper. Well, for what it's worth, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. Lily's already taken a shine to you. Rachel smiled, her eyes glistening slightly. Thank you, Michael. That means more than you know. The conversation settled into a comfortable pause, broken only by the sound of the plane gliding over wood. The simple companionship felt like a balm against the chaos both had carried for so long. Later that afternoon, as Rachel sat on the porch watching rain droplets race each other down the banister, her phone buzzed again. She glanced down at the reminder blinking across her screen. License hearing, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Her stomach tightened. The clock was ticking. The rain had finally lifted, leaving behind a cool, damp scent of earth and pine. Sunlight broke through scattered clouds, casting golden beams across the small backyard as evening approached. Inside the house, the clatter of dishes and the aroma of baked chicken filled the cozy kitchen. Michael stirred the pot on the stove while Rachel set the table, working in quiet coordination that had developed over the past few days. Their movements had grown more natural, their silences more comfortable. Lily skipped into the kitchen, her braids bouncing with each step. Smells so good. Almost ready, kiddo? Michael said, smiling. Rachel handed Lily a small bowl of salad. You can be my helper and put this on the table. As they sat down together, the warmth of the meal seemed to mirror the subtle shift happening between them, a cautious trust replacing initial uncertainty. Dinner began with small talk. Lily chatted about her day at school, proudly announcing that she had aced her spelling test. Rachel listened attentively, her laughter light and genuine. Michael watched them, quietly moved by how seamlessly Rachel fit into the evening routine. Once Lily excused herself to finish her homework, the house settled into a softer, quieter rhythm. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the faint hum of the dishwasher. Michael cleared his throat gently, breaking the silence. Thank you again for everything you've done around here. You made things easier. Rachel offered a modest smile. It's the least I can do after you've opened your home to me. He nodded, studying her for a moment before his voice grew more thoughtful. If you don't mind me asking what happened. To bring you here, I mean. Rachel hesitated, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her water glass. She had avoided this conversation, afraid of how much speaking the words would reopen old wounds. But something about Michael's patient gaze made her feel safe. "My fiancé," she began softly. "He was killed in a car accident last year. A drunk driver ran a red light." Michael's expression darkened with sympathy. "I'm so sorry." Rachel inhaled shakily. "The man who hit him, he was the father of one of my patients. A very difficult man. His son was in my care for months before the accident. I always suspected the tension between us wasn't just about his son's illness." She paused, gathering herself. "After the accident, everything spiraled. The hospital started reviewing my conduct, whether I'd acted professionally in dealing with the father. Then the complaints started, and I was placed on administrative leave while my license was reviewed." Michael shook his head softly. "That's terrible. None of that was your fault." Rachel smiled faintly, though pain still flickered in her eyes. "I know that, but knowing it doesn't make it any easier to fight when everything you built feels like it's crumbling." Michael let out a slow breath. His voice was steady but tinged with understanding. "I lost my wife to cancer 3 years ago." Rachel's eyes softened. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, his gaze distant. "It started with a cough that wouldn't go away. By the time they found it, the cancer had spread too far. She fought hard, but it moved faster." There was a quiet vulnerability in his voice. A man who had learned to carry grief without letting it consume him, but who still felt its weight every day. "Lily was 6 when we lost her," Michael continued. "She barely understood what was happening, but somehow kids sense more than we give them credit for." Rachel's heart clenched. "It must have been so hard on both of you." "It was," Michael admitted. "Still is. Some days." They sat in silence for a few moments, their stories now laid bare between them, like fragile bridges spanning an invisible distance. Rachel spoke again, her voice quiet but firm. "You've done a beautiful job with her." A flicker of gratitude crossed Michael's face. "Thank you. She keeps me grounded." Rachel smiled softly, the fragile beginnings of peace settling into her chest. For the first time in months, the crushing loneliness felt lighter, shared. Before either could say more, the sound of a text message chimed from Rachel's phone, resting nearby. She reached for it instinctively, expecting perhaps a reminder or a hospital notice. Instead, the message on the screen sent a chill down her spine. "Don't fight the hearing. You'll lose." Her breath caught. Her fingers gripped the phone tighter, and she quickly locked the screen before Michael could catch a glimpse. "Everything okay?" Michael asked, noticing the change in her expression. Rachel forced a smile. "Just a reminder for the hearing next week." Michael nodded, sensing she wasn't ready to share more. He respected her silence, even as a faint thread of concern tugged at him. Later that night, after Rachel retreated to the guest room, Michael stepped outside onto the porch. The night was cool, the sky clear, stars winking quietly above. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Hey!" His brother's voice answered after a few rings. "Everything all right?" Michael exhaled. "Yeah, I just needed to talk." "How's Lily doing?" "She's good. Happy even. Rachel's been helping a lot." There was a pause on the other end before his brother spoke again. "Just be careful, Mike." "I know. I'm serious. I know she seems nice, and I know you're a good man. But don't forget, Lily's already lost one mother. Don't put her through another heartbreak." Michael's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't do that to her." "I'm not saying you would, but sometimes life doesn't give us a choice." Michael's eyes drifted toward the window, where Lily's room glowed softly. "I hear you. Just go slow." "Yeah," Michael whispered. "Good night." "Night, brother." As he hung up, Michael leaned against the porch post, staring out into the quiet darkness. The connection he felt with Rachel was undeniable, but so was the responsibility he carried for Lily. Inside, in the dim glow of the guest room, Rachel sat on the bed clutching her phone, her heart pounding. The message replayed in her mind like a threat, hanging in the air. The past had followed her here. The heavy wooden doors of the licensing board conference room loomed ahead as Rachel stood frozen for a moment, steadying her breath. The sterile corridor hummed with fluorescent lights, amplifying her anxiety. Michael placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You've got this," he whispered. Rachel managed a faint nod, though her stomach twisted into knots. She stepped inside, Michael following behind, but stopping near the back of the room. His presence, though silent, grounded her. The room was stark, clinical, a long polished table where the board members sat, files and papers neatly arranged before them. Across from Rachel sat the opposing counsel, Leonard Briggs, the sharp-eyed attorney representing the patient's family. His gaze was cold, predatory. The chairwoman, Ms. Hartwell, adjusted her glasses and called the session to order. "Ms. Morgan, thank you for coming. We're here today to review the conduct complaint filed by Mr. and Mrs. Dalton regarding your handling of their son's care." Rachel sat upright, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes, ma'am." Briggs stood first. "The facts are simple. My clients allege that Ms. Morgan exhibited unprofessional behavior while caring for their son. Inflammatory remarks, emotional instability, bias against the family, all culminating in a tragic situation that no family should endure." Rachel's jaw tensed. She wanted to scream that none of this was true, but she knew better than to interrupt. Briggs continued, voice calm but cutting. "Furthermore, shortly after these alleged incidents, Ms. Morgan became involved in a personal dispute with Mr. Dalton, resulting in an unfortunate car accident. This sequence of events raises grave concerns about her emotional state during the period in question." Michael clenched his fist in the back of the room, his face tight with frustration. He wanted nothing more than to stand and defend her, but this was Rachel's battle. Ms. Hartwell turned to Rachel. "Ms. Morgan, how do you respond to these accusations?" Rachel exhaled slowly and stood. Her voice wavered but held firm. "I treated their son with every ounce of compassion and professionalism I have. The child was critically ill for months. Yes, the father and I had disagreements, but never once did I compromise my duty of care. The accident that took my fiancé's life was caused by Mr. Dalton's negligence, not mine." Her eyes burned, but she forced herself to remain composed. "I've dedicated my entire career to helping people. My personal loss doesn't define my professional abilities." Briggs stood again, voice dripping with false concern. "Ms. Morgan, would you say you were emotionally stable during this period? Losing your fiancé, struggling financially, facing accusations. Can you confidently say none of that impacted your judgment?" Rachel's throat tightened. The insinuation struck deep, reopening wounds she had worked so hard to contain. I compartmentalized. I always put my patients first. "But isn't it true," Briggs pressed, "that you sought counseling during this time?" Rachel's voice cracked. "Yes, after the accident, to cope with my grief." Briggs nodded as if he had proven his point. "Exactly. Grief counseling, emotional distress, financial instability, and now facing eviction. These are not conditions conducive to sound medical judgment." Rachel's eyes filled despite her best efforts. The weight of months of struggle pressed down on her, making it harder to breathe. "I did my job," she whispered, her voice nearly breaking. The board members murmured among themselves. Ms. Hartwell looked up solemnly. "Ms. Morgan, the board has reviewed all testimony, records, and evidence. While we sympathize with your personal losses, we must prioritize patient safety and public trust." Rachel gripped the edges of the table, bracing herself. "Effective immediately, your nursing license is suspended indefinitely, pending further review." The words echoed in her ears like a final verdict. Rachel blinked rapidly as tears threatened to fall. She nodded numbly, unable to form words. Michael stood from back, his face etched with sorrow. His instinct was to rush to her, but he waited for proceedings to adjourn. "Thank you for your time," Ms. Hartwell concluded. The room emptied quickly, Briggs offering a cold nod as he gathered his files and left. Rachel stood motionless, her breath shallow. Michael finally approached, placing a steadying hand on her back. "Rachel, it's over," she choked out, finally letting the tears fall. "Everything I've worked for, it's all gone." "No, it's not," Michael said softly. "This isn't the end." Rachel shook her head, her voice raw. "I can't stay here, Michael. Not after this." They walked out into gray Portland afternoon. the drizzle returning like a cruel reminder of the storm still following her. The ride home was painfully silent. Michael stole glances at Rachel, who sat motionless, staring blankly out the passenger window. Her face, pale and hollow, betrayed the emotional avalanche inside. When they finally reached the house, Rachel quietly thanked him and disappeared into the guest room without another word. Michael watched her retreat, feeling utterly helpless. That evening, the house sat heavy and quiet. Lily sensed a shift in the air. She glanced at her father while stirring her macaroni and cheese. "Is Miss Rachel sad?" she asked softly. Michael nodded, his throat thick. "She had a really hard day, sweetheart." Lily's small face scrunched in thought. She slipped down from the table and padded to her room. Michael assumed she needed a moment alone too. Hours later, as the house settled into stillness, Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, numb. Her suitcase lay half-packed on the floor. She stared at it, unsure whether to zip it up or leave it open. What was the point anymore? A soft shuffling sound interrupted her thoughts. She turned and noticed a small envelope that had been slid under her door. Curious, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a simple, crayon-drawn note in Lily's careful handwriting. "Please stay. You're like sunshine." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers trembled as she traced the uneven letters. Warmth bloomed painfully in her chest, cutting through the thick fog of defeat. Tears welled again, but these were different. Softer, healing. Outside the door, Michael stood silently, listening, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this small note would give her one reason not to give up. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting a pale glow across the guest room. The quiet rustle of fabric filled the air as Rachel carefully folded a stack of shirts and placed them into her open suitcase. Each fold felt heavier than the last, as though she were packing away not just clothes, but the last fragile pieces of her hope. Her fingers paused on a small framed photo. Her and her fiancé, smiling beneath a willow tree on a summer day. She traced his face gently with her thumb, swallowing back the tight lump in her throat. A soft knock broke the silence. "Rachel?" Michael's voice came from the doorway, low and hesitant. She quickly wiped at her eyes and offered a small, forced smile. "Hey!" Michael stepped inside, his gaze falling on the half-packed suitcase. His chest tightened. "You don't have to do this." Rachel let out a weak sigh. "Michael, I can't stay here forever. My license is gone. My reputation's ruined. I've got nothing left to fight for." "That's not true," Michael said softly. "You have people here who care about you." Her shoulders sagged. "I can't keep being a burden. You've already done more for me than anyone." "You're not a burden," he said firmly. "And you're not alone." Rachel opened her mouth to protest, but Michael took a step closer, his voice gentle but steady. "You saw Lily's note. She meant every word. So do I." She lowered her gaze, emotions swirling just beneath the surface. "I don't know if I'm strong enough, Michael." "You are," he whispered. "You faced more than anyone should have to, and you're still standing. We don't give up on family." The word hung in the air, delicate and powerful. Rachel looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "Family?" Michael nodded, his voice rough. "That's what you become to us." Her throat tightened, and she blinked quickly, letting out a soft, broken laugh. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not easy," Michael admitted, "but it's worth fighting for." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rachel slowly closed the suitcase, leaving it by the wall. She wasn't ready to unpack yet, but she wasn't leaving either. Later that afternoon, as Lily worked on her school project at the kitchen table, Michael stepped out onto the porch and pulled out his phone. After a few rings, a gruff but familiar voice answered. "Mike, been a while." "Hey, Tom," Michael greeted, relief washing over him with the sound of his old friend's voice. "I need a favor." Tom chuckled. "Of course you do. You never called just to say hi." Michael smiled faintly. "I've got a situation. It's not for me. It's for someone I care about." As Michael explained Rachel's story, Tom listened intently, his tone growing serious. "Sounds like she's been through hell." "She has. And the hearing, it didn't feel right, Tom. The opposing attorney hammered her on personal stuff. things that had nothing to do with her work. "Leonard Briggs, you said?" Tom asked, his voice darkening. "Yeah, you know him?" "Too well," Tom muttered. "He's a shark. Cuts corners when he can. I'll start digging, see what I can find." "Thank you," Michael said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Anything helps." "I'll be in touch, Mike." As the call ended, Michael exhaled, feeling the first flicker of hope take root. It was small, but it was something. Meanwhile, Rachel stood in front of a modest brick building on the edge of town. The hand-painted sign above the door read, "Portland Free Clinic." She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The clinic was bustling, filled with patients who couldn't afford regular medical care. Despite the chaos, the atmosphere buzzed with quiet purpose, a place where healing mattered more than paperwork. A woman in her 50s greeted her with a warm smile. "You must be Rachel. I'm Dr. Linda Perez. Thanks for volunteering." Rachel returned the smile, feeling a mixture of nervousness and relief. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Anytime. We can't pay you, of course, but we could always use another pair of skilled hands." "I'm happy to help," Rachel said sincerely. Though she couldn't practice as a licensed nurse, Rachel assisted wherever she could, checking in patients, organizing files, offering comfort. For the first time in weeks, she felt useful again. She wasn't completely healed, but for the first time in a long while, her days had purpose. The work days passed quickly, each one building her confidence bit by bit. At night, she'd return to Michael's home where Lily would excitedly tell her about school and insist they read bedtime stories together. The small routines slowly stitched together the torn fabric of her life. One evening, as they finished dinner, Michael noticed a different glow in Rachel's expression. "Clinic's going well?" he asked. Rachel nodded. "It feels good to help again, even in small ways." Michael smiled. "That's the Rachel I know." A small blush crept onto her cheeks. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Michael." "We're in this together," he said gently. "Like I said, we don't give up on family." Rachel's eyes shimmered with emotion, but she said nothing, only offering a grateful smile as her heart softened further. Later that night, Michael's phone buzzed. It was Tom. He stepped outside to take the call. "Tell me you got something," Michael said quietly. Tom's voice was sharp. "I dug into Briggs. Turns out the patient's father, Dalton, has some connections with one of the board members. There are emails suggesting they pressured Briggs to paint Rachel as unstable, regardless of the actual evidence." Michael's stomach churned. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a setup." Michael's pulse quickened. "Can you get the documents?" "Already working on it. If we present this properly, we may have grounds to appeal." Michael's hand clenched into a fist, his voice determined. "Thank you, Tom. You may have just saved her." As he ended the call, Michael looked up at the stars above. The flicker of hope had grown stronger. Inside, unaware of the storm about to shift in her favor, Rachel tucked Lily into bed, her heart lighter than it had been in months. The faint click of the printer filled Michael's small living room, spitting out pages one by one. Rachel sat at the dining table, her eyes scanning the printed documents with careful precision. Each new page told a story she hadn't been allowed to read before, a story of administrative missteps, altered reports, and quiet cover-ups. Michael leaned over her shoulder, pointing to a highlighted section. "Look at this one. The patient's vitals were flagged 2 days before the incident, but the attending never followed up. That was never mentioned at your hearing." Rachel's fingers trembled slightly as she traced a line. "This wasn't my error. The family blamed me for everything, but the hospital, they were trying to protect themselves." Tom had done more than they could have hoped. Not only had he uncovered Briggs' questionable tactics, but the hospital's internal communications revealed even deeper negligence. The board had been presented with a carefully controlled narrative, one that made Rachel the scapegoat for mistakes far above her pay grade. Michael pulled out his laptop and opened the appeal forms. "We can submit the appeal by Monday. Tom's ready to back us up if they try anything." Rachel exhaled slowly, a strange mix of relief and dread filling her chest. "I don't know how to thank you, Michael." "You don't need to," he said softly. "I just want to see you get your life back." For hours, they worked side by side, combing through paperwork, building timelines, organizing evidence. The late autumn rain tapped gently against the windows, wrapping the house in a cocoon of quiet determination. As midnight neared, Rachel leaned back, rubbing her eyes. "I think that's everything," she whispered. Michael sat across from her, studying her face. The exhaustion was there, yes, but underneath it, a quiet fire had returned. The defeated woman he had found in the rain was gone, replaced by someone who refused to be crushed. "You're stronger than you know," he said. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the silence between them shifted. It wasn't empty, it was full of everything unsaid, full of the bond that had grown, tender and cautious. The dim light cast soft shadows across her face, and Michael felt his pulse quicken. Rachel's breath caught slightly, her lips parting just enough to speak, but no words came. His gaze flickered down to her mouth, then back to her eyes. The space between them narrowed instinctively, as though drawn together by something neither had planned. For one suspended second, the world outside ceased to exist. But Rachel pulled back, her cheeks flushing as she looked down at the papers. We should finish double-checking the filing instructions. Michael sat back as well, clearing his throat, his heart thudding harder than he wanted to admit. Yeah, right. No mistakes this time. The moment passed, but its warmth lingered in the air. The next morning, as the rain softened into a misty drizzle, Rachel and Michael walked together into the law office where Tom was waiting. His desk was covered in neatly arranged files. "You've done your homework," Tom said with a grin, handing Rachel a pen. "Sign here to officially file the appeal." Rachel's hand shook slightly as she signed her name. It felt surreal. One more step toward reclaiming everything that had been stolen from her. "Now we wait," Tom said. "The board has 30 days to respond, but I suspect you'll hear from them sooner." He wasn't wrong. Only 3 days later, Michael answered the phone and handed it to Rachel with a tight expression. "It's from the hospital's legal department." Rachel's stomach flipped as she pressed the phone to her ear. "Hello?" A measured female voice spoke. "Ms. Morgan, this is Andrea Wells, representing Portland General Hospital. We reviewed your recently filed appeal. While we acknowledge certain procedural oversights may have occurred, we believe prolonged litigation would serve no one." Rachel's grip tightened. "What are you suggesting?" "We're prepared to offer a confidential settlement," the woman continued smoothly. "A financial compensation package in exchange for withdrawal of your appeal and a full release of claims against the hospital." Rachel's heart pounded. The weight of months of pain, humiliation, and injustice collided with the cold offer of convenience. Money, silence, no vindication, no restored license. She struggled to find her voice. "You're offering me hush money." "I wouldn't characterize it that way," Andrew replied calmly. "We're offering you closure, without the uncertainty of continued proceedings." Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. "I need time to consider." "Of course," Andrea said politely. "We'll await your response." Rachel ended the call and sat silently, staring at the phone in her lap. Michael knelt down in front of her, searching her face. "They want to bury this." She nodded. "They're scared." Michael's voice was steady. "Because the truth's on your side." Tears threatened her again, not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of everything. "Michael, if I take the settlement, it's over. No license, no career. But if I keep fighting, I risk losing again." "You won't be fighting alone," he said softly. "And it's not just about winning. It's about standing up for what's right." Rachel swallowed hard. The temptation of a clean exit was strong, but so was the voice inside her that refused to be silenced. Lily peeked in from the hallway, sensing the tension. "Miss Rachel, is everything okay?" Rachel smiled softly, blinking back tears. "Just figuring things out, sweetie." Lily smiled and held up a drawing she had made. Rachel, Michael, and Lily holding hand beneath a bright yellow sun. Rachel stared at it for a long moment, her resolve solidifying. She gently placed the drawing on the table and looked at Michael. "I'm not taking their deal," she whispered. "Not this time." Michael's face broke into a proud, quiet smile. "Good." Outside, The rain finally stopped, the clouds parting just enough to let a thin beam of golden light break through, a flicker of hope against the gray. Rachel stood at the kitchen window, staring out at the quiet Portland morning. The rain had lifted, leaving behind a world that glistened beneath pale sunlight. Yet inside her, the storm still raged. The settlement offer weighed heavily on her. It sat in a manila envelope on the table behind her, its presence impossible to ignore, a sum large enough to clear her debts, secure a fresh start, and end the battle. All she had to do was walk away from the fight, from the truth. Her reflection in the window looked back at her, tired, uncertain, but not broken. The soft creak of the floorboards signaled Michael's arrival. He paused in the doorway, watching her with gentle concern. "You couldn't sleep either?" he asked softly. Rachel shook her head. "How can I? Every part of me keeps turning it over in my head." She finally turned to face him. "What if fighting this just destroys me all over again? What if I lose? Again?" Michael stepped closer, his eyes steady, warm. "And what if you win?" She gave a hollow laugh. "And what if I don't?" Michael took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Rachel, you know I've been where you are. After my wife died, I didn't think I could move forward either. I was scared every single day." His voice cracked slightly. "Scared I couldn't raise Lily right. Scared I'd fail her. Scared I'd never feel anything real again." Rachel's eyes softened, listening. "But I kept going," he continued. "Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I couldn't let fear be what decided my future. And neither should you." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "I wish I had your strength." Michael shook his head. "You've already shown more strength than most people ever have to. You faced losing your fiancé, your job, your home, and you didn't give up. You didn't run, even when it felt hopeless." She blinked, her voice barely a whisper. "You saved me, Michael." "No," he said, his voice low and full. "We saved each other." The moment hung between them, tender and charged, but not rushed. A quiet understanding passed through their eyes, a bond deeper than words. Before either of them could say more, light footsteps padded into the room. Lily, clutching her stuffed rabbit, looked up sleepily at both adults. "Why are you up so early?" she asked with a yawn. Rachel smiled and knelt beside her. "Just thinking." Lily's innocent eyes searched her face. "Are you still sad about your job?" Rachel hesitated. "A little." Lily tilted her head thoughtfully. "Daddy says when things are scary, you have to be brave anyway." Rachel glanced up at Michael, who offered a quiet smile. "Even when you don't know what's going to happen?" Rachel asked softly. Lily nodded. "Uh-huh, that's what heroes do." A tear slipped down Rachel's cheek as she hugged the little girl tightly. "Thank you, sweetheart." Lily hugged her back, rested her head on Rachel's shoulder. "You're like my superhero." Rachel looked over at Michael, her decision crystallizing in that instant. The fear was still there, it always would be, but so was something stronger, courage. Later that afternoon, Rachel sat in Tom's office, the settlement envelope unopened on his desk. "I'm not signing it," she said firmly. Tom nodded slowly, as if testing the strength of her resolve. "You're sure?" "Yes." Her voice was clear, steady. "I want my name back. I want my license back. I want the truth out." Tom smiled approvingly. "Then we fight." He handed her a folder containing the appeal hearing notice. The date's been set for next month. Rachel let out a slow breath, bracing herself. "Thank you for standing by me." "You're not alone in this," Tom assured her. "We'll be ready." As Rachel stood to leave, Tom added, "There's one thing you should know. Briggs will be representing the hospital again." Her chest tightened at the name, but she nodded. "Let him. I'm ready for him this time." But Tom's expression darkened slightly. They've also added a surprise witness. Rachel's pulse quickened. "Who?" "Dalton." The name struck like a blow. Dalton. The father of the patient who had died. The man who had directed his grief and fury squarely at her from the start. Rachel's knees weakened for a moment, but she steadied herself against the desk. "Of course," she whispered. "He was always at the center of this." Tom leaned forward. "They're bringing him in to play on the board's emotions. His testimony will be intense." Rachel clenched her jaw. I can handle it. Tom nodded. I believe you can. As she left the office, the weight of what was a headboard down on her shoulders, but beneath it, a newfound steel held her upright. Later that evening, Michael found her on the back porch, staring out at the deepening dusk. He handed her a mug of tea and sat beside her. Tom told me. Rachel nodded. Dalton's going to testify. Michael studied her face carefully. Are you okay? I don't know, she admitted, but I'm not running. Michael exhaled softly, pride evident in his eyes. You're braver than you give yourself credit for. She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm still scared, Michael. So am I, he confessed. Every time I care about someone, I'm scared. Scared of losing again. But I'm learning that caring anyway, that's the bravest thing we can do. Rachel swallowed, her eyes locking with his. The vulnerability between them shimmered in the fading light. Neither spoke the words, but both felt the unspoken truth blooming quietly between them. For now, they would fight. Together. Inside, Lily taped her bright drawing back onto the refrigerator, her simple sun beaming over their 3 stick-figure selves, together beneath a rainbow. The heavy wooden doors of the hearing room loomed ahead as Rachel paused at the entrance, drawing a long breath. Michael stood beside her, his hand gently resting on the small of her back. You ready? He asked softly. Rachel's fingers tightened around the folder she carried. As ready as I'll ever be. They stepped inside together, the air thick with tension. The board members sat at a long table beneath the seal of the Medical Licensing Authority. Across the room, Briggs and his legal team whispered in tight circles, while Dalton sat nearby, his face stern, eyes sharp with lingering grief. Rachel swallowed the lump rising in her throat. Today was not about fear. It was about truth. The lead board member, an older woman with kind but discerning eyes, spoke first. Ms. Morgan, we reviewed your appeal and the newly submitted evidence. Today you will have the opportunity to present your case in full. Rachel stood and approached the microphone, her voice steady. Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand here not only to defend my license, but to share the truth that was hidden. With calm precision, she began to unfold the timeline, the overlooked vitals, the hospital's administrative failures, the altered reports uncovered by Tom's investigation. Every word was deliberate, every point supported by documentation. She made no attempt to shift blame, only to shine light on the full picture. Briggs interjected occasionally with objections, but Tom countered them skillfully, presenting supporting evidence with confidence. When Rachel reached the most painful part, her voice softened. Mr. Dalton, I want to acknowledge your unimaginable loss. I never stopped caring for your daughter. I followed protocol. I did everything I could, but critical decisions were delayed by others. Decisions I was not allowed to make. Dalton's jaw tightened, his grief flickering into something more complex, something that almost resembled doubt. Briggs rose sharply. Mr. Chairman, may I remind the board that grief-stricken parents are not the ones responsible for overseeing patient care. Ms. Morgan was. Rachel held her ground, and I never ran from that responsibility. But I was also never allowed to share what really happened. Until now. The room fell quiet. Hours later, as the final testimonies concluded, the board recessed to deliberate. Rachel stepped into the hallway, her legs trembling as she sat on the bench. Michael joined her, taking her hand. You were incredible in there, he whispered. I'm still scared, she admitted, even after everything. That's because you care, Michael replied gently. That's what makes you who you are. The doors reopened. The board members returned, their faces unreadable. Rachel stood, her heart pounding as she faced him one final time. The chairwoman cleared her throat. Ms. Morgan, after thorough review, the board finds that significant administrative failures contributed to the incident in question. We acknowledge that while no practitioner is flawless, your actions did not constitute negligence. Therefore, your license will be fully reinstated, effective immediately. Rachel gasped softly, her eyes widening in disbelief. Relief surged through her body like a tidal wave, tears filling her eyes. The board wasn't finished. We will also be referring the hospital administration's conduct to the state regulatory agency for further investigation. Rachel clutched Michael's hand, her entire body light with the weight finally lifting. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. As they stepped outside into the afternoon, the sky offered a cool drizzle, a gentle reminder of where this journey had begun. Michael wrapped his jacket over her shoulders, grinning. "You did it." "No," Rachel corrected with a smile. "We did it." The rain continued softly through the evening as they arrived at Lily's elementary school for her class play. The gymnasium buzzed with parents and children, the low hum of voices blending with the rustle of programs and folding chairs. Lily spotted them immediately from the stage and waved with a wide, excited grin. Rachel waved back, her heart full. As the lights dimmed and the children began their performance, Michael leaned in and whispered, "You know, I've never seen her this happy." Rachel glanced at him, her voice warm. "She's been my sunshine through all of this." Michael's eyes softened, his hand finding hers again. "You've been ours." The play unfolded with its sweet, innocent charm. Tiny voices, missed lines, and proud parents filling the room with laughter and applause. When Lily took her final bow, she searched for Rachel and Michael in the crowd. Rachel stood to her feet, clapping through tears as Michael placed his hand over hers, steady and strong. After the performance, Lily ran into their arms. "Did I do good?" "You were perfect, sweetheart," Rachel said, kissing the top of her head. Michael smiled. "The best I've ever seen." As the crowd began to thin, Rachel and Michael found themselves alone near the back of the gymnasium. The moment hung between them, quiet, heavy with everything they'd endured and everything waiting ahead. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "Rachel." She looked up, her eyes glistening beneath the soft lights. The storm that had raged in both their hearts for so long had finally cleared, revealing something new, something tender. Michael cupped her face gently, pausing only for the briefest heartbeat to read her expression. When she didn't pull away, he closed the space between them, and their lips met in a kiss full of warmth, healing, and quiet promise. Rachel melted into the embrace, allowing herself to fully feel what she had feared for so long, the possibility of love again. When they finally pulled apart, the soft rain could still be heard outside, tapping rhythmically against the windows. Michael smiled and whispered, "Sometimes the storm brings us exactly where we're meant to be." Rachel's smile matched his, her eyes shining with hope. "I think it brought me home." Hand in hand, they walked out into the gentle rain, together, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. What would you have done if you saw someone crying in the rain like Michael did? Drop your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Every like helps us share more emotional journeys that touch the heart.